FM25 is rapidly approaching now. It'll be on us before we know it. I thought I'd take a moment to just check in on what FM25 might be. This is entirely speculative. I don't have any inside information here or any kind of knowledge on what the game will actually be. But I thought we'd have a look at what Unity Engine, because we know Unity Engine is coming to the game, what Unity Engine might bring to Football Manager 2025. Now, obviously, last week we got a big announcement that the Premier League license is going to be added to the game. Of course, this could change some of how the presentation is delivered, certainly around the Premier League. And the addition of a license does change things a little bit here and what I'm going to be talking about. But overall, I think we're going to be looking at some broader things that Unity might allow Sports Interactive to do with their game. So let's go have a look. I've got a couple of different things I want to look at as part of this. So I'm just going to go back. Obviously, 20th of June 2023, which is a year ago, just under a year ago, is when we got the info about FM24 and FM25 at the same time. So I think we could be due something soon, maybe, you know, obviously with the Premier League announcement last week, and you go back to the year before as well. So if we look and have a look here, we have got FM23, FM24. Now, this is what they said about FM25 at the time. A lot of people were looking at FM24, but we got that news that the Unity Engine was coming, what they called at the time Project Dragonfly. In 2017, they upgraded their 3D engine, but some of the things they actually admitted some of the things went backwards from a consumer-facing perspective. The faces and new gens and stuff, the technology didn't hold up and it stagnated. So those are the kind of things I expect that the Unity Engine should allow them to improve. And the rendering engine didn't keep pace, and they used their own internal engine. So one of the things they decided to do was to go with a particular model, and something you've noticed in the last few years is how they've taken on different. I like this piece of information is pretty interesting. Business models, platforms, working practices, and games as a service. And I think this is really key into why probably they've chosen Unity as a model, because you got to think now that Football Manager is not just that PC game. It is also in the Netflix deal on phones. It is in the Apple Arcade, if on tablets and also on phones. It's a slightly different version. You've got the Switch. It's in PlayStation Plus as of yesterday. It is also in the Xbox Game Pass year round. So actually, I mean, there's a lot of ways to access Football Manager now without even paying for the game up front. And it gives them a massive customer base. And I think it's really interesting, and something maybe a little bit worrying to think about is that term games as a service. I know is a very controversial term. It's interesting that they use that term. It's something that people often associate with long-term monetization of a game. So hopefully we don't go down that route. I don't think they will go down that route. It's not a studio that traditionally has done so, but it's certainly something to watch. Obviously, this has been delayed quite a bit, so it shows that it's coming to 2024. And they've decided to use Unity, which does a number of games, Genshin Impact, City Skylines. Obviously, City Skylines 2 came out end of last year or start of this year. Actually, that game didn't perform quite as well as people expected, which was interesting. Something else to say about Unity, and I think on the channel, if you go back on the channel, there's a video about the problem with Unity. There was a big issue with Unity in terms of a new direction. They added new monetization for the Unity platform, not for us as end consumers. That would affect the devs. A lot of devs switched from Unity to other programs, and there were some other problems with how they're updating. They've also had a large number of layoffs, some of that I'll get into later, because it might impact. Actually, I've been planning this video for a little bit of time, what I wanted to include in it, and some of the things I planned 4 or 5 months ago are now no longer they're almost certainly not going to be relevant to the game now. But I will talk about that when we get to this. So there's a lot of things. So I think, this is a universal render pipeline, allows them to make the game across optimal graphics across a range of platforms. So you're looking from mobile up to top-end PCs, and the ability to output the game to this PCs. I mean, mobiles can produce some pretty impressive stuff nowadays. You know, go look at some of the games you can play on your phone. It's certainly not where we were 10, 15 years ago. Obviously, a PC is going to be more powerful. What a PC can handle is going to be more powerful. But I think the range of supported devices is really interesting in terms of what that enables them to do. And I think some people think that they should be focusing just on the PC version, and they shouldn't be focusing on these other ones. I think it's good that there is all these other ways of accessing the game. I'm curious to see what the differences between the versions will be with this new, let's say this way, a new method of pipelining into the different platforms. If like the console gets closer to what the PC version is, I imagine that at least the UI perspective is going to change slightly for console, because most people are going to be playing with a controller, I'd imagine, rather than keyboard and mouse. and on phones, of course, with the touchscreen. But I certainly think there might be some more similarities across the different devices. So what are some of the things they've promised? Significantly better looking match day, pitch and supporting stadium environments, vastly improved user interface, so the UI navigating through the screens, that'll be interesting. We've got the new animation tech that they get in with Unity. It's kind of hard to find something to compare this to, but I do have, and I've seen out there a few people showing different football games on the Unity engine. The one that I would immediately go to is Top 11. So Top 11 also runs on Unity. I'm going to turn down slowly. So Top 11 also runs on the Unity engine. As far as I can tell, they seem to indicate that they use the Unity engine. And the graphics in Top 11, I would say, considering this is a mobile game, are pretty good. They're certainly up there with Football Manager, pretty close to Football Manager. I'll see if I can get a good image of the graphics. Some bits are maybe better. I think that stadium lighting is certainly better. If I go back there's a penalty moment which sort of looks good at first glance, but you can see, those players sort of have synchronized animations, which looks a little bit weird. I don't think it looks quite as natural as the way some of the animations do in Football Manager. But you got to remember this runs on a mobile devices primarily, and some of it looks a little bit more cartoony, like that missed interception there. But this is Top 11. As I said, this runs on a mobile device with a much smaller studio, I'd imagine, as well. That's not going to be in game. So I think there's a sort of standard there that they set in Unity with Top 11 that I would hope to expect to see Football Manager be. I think that so some of those animations, those tackle animations, aren't as great, I don't think, but other bits about the player movement there is a bit better. I think if Football Manager is a pretty big team now. I think Miles tweeted out the other day that they are nearly at 300. I think they should be able to create something that certainly looks better than this. There are some videos of other Unity engine football games, but again, these are probably single man teams. I certainly don't think that they are probably what we're aiming for. Look at this. This isn't, but I don't think it's certainly anything to be worried about either. This one is World of Football. I think World of Football has some nice things, but again, you can see certainly Football Manager is going to be a level above this. Again, some more animations, but I think these are probably below what we'd expect out of Football Manager. Yeah, you can see very, very basic stuff. So back to what we're on about Unity. The animation tech, I think there's some interesting stuff here. Certainly in terms of motion capture and how they can fit that into the game. I think that could be really good. Upgrades to the graphical models in stadiums, for example, the animations and stuff. So actually there is some tech. It's 2021 tech, so they probably have updated it and more recent tech, but I will just show you that. So this is Unity's Metacast deck that they did with UFC fighters. So you can see almost one-to-one what the UFC fighters are doing, which is really, really cool. Just matching those animations into the game. You're like, this looks really good. So that was Unity's Metacast tech, which I think could fit into Football Manager. I think that looks really cool. Again, this was from Tony Grasshopper, FM Grasshopper. He posted out some screenshots of stadiums. These are actually from City Skylines 1, but just some of the lighting that looks kind of cool, kind of like a nice overview. Now, one of the things I mentioned last time was that there were a few issues going on at Unity with the introduction of these fees, some issues around the CEO, which is the very, very controversial John Riccitiello, who, if anyone doesn't know, once wanted to charge people to, if they wanted to reload their gun in Battlefield, they had to pay real money.
When you are 6 hours into playing Battlefield and you run out of ammo in your clip, and we ask you for $1 to reload, you're really not very price sensitive at that point in time.
So yeah, that's the kind of person they were dealing with Unity. He's left the company, so he resigned, and there's been a number of changes since. Some of that good, some of that not so good. So the not so good is that there have been a number of closures and changes within the Unity system. They've shrunk down the size of the business quite a lot. And one of the casualties of that was something that I thought was actually kind of promising, which was the Ziva tech that they had. So this is the Ziva Dynamics tech. You see some really nice facial animations. I don't know if we'd ever see the facial animations like this in Football Manager, mainly because of licensing reasons, I think. Also because I don't think they want to go into that detail. You never see a close-up of the player's face. It's not FIFA, but certainly, promising. I could imagine this being used sort of more in the in the new gen realm. There is some other tech that they might use for that, which we can look at later on. But unfortunately, they discontinued the Ziva tech. There's some other really good demonstrations of the Ziva tech, but yeah, it got discontinued earlier this year, so that's gone. Studios can buy a 5-year license to it without support, so it might be that that's in the game, but I doubt it. So there are some other things that I hope that Unity is sort of able to bring, things like real time, and you saw that in the top 11 game, the real-time dynamic shadows, or I don't know if they were real-time dynamic in top 11, but certainly better shadows, which should make for a more engaging game. This is just a little preview of some of the things that are in Unity, things like directional lights, spotlights, potentially ray tracing on PC. In terms of physics, and one thing I will say is you don't see a lot of physics 3D engine games on Unity, which is interesting. There are some, but there's not a lot of fully 3D engine games in, I mean, it's going to show one on the screen right as I say that. It's going to show a couple, in fact, but normally there aren't so many. In fact, these are new games, a lot of these. But things like physics engines for gravity and collisions. There are, I think on paper, 3 physics engines you can use in Unity Physics, which is a long time standing one, which is run by NVIDIA, Unity Dots, and Unity Physics and Havoc. You know, the Unity Dots is probably the most interesting from the FM point of view because it's primarily data driven, which might be useful for how they design FM, although I'm not an expert in this kind of thing, so this might sound like complete nonsense. But it allows not only for standard physics, but also behavioral properties such as simulation and AI, which I think is really important for Footmanager. How the NPCs, the players behave, I think is important, and it's probably more scalable multi-platform. So I wonder if the Unity Dots is the engine, or the part of the engine that they're using. I imagine there is going to be a lot of custom work in there as well. It's a big studio. It's something they're very used to doing. So I imagine they've built in their own custom elements into the game. One of the other things that maybe we get out of the new Footmanager is better multiplayer. Unity allows, or it creates better multiplayer network stacking. Their multiplayer modes and the way in which you implement multiplayer in Unity, I think, is a lot easier, and also sort of the integration now that they've got with the different game stores is getting better. So I wonder if a multiplayer is a side that is perhaps a bit better this year, or at least in the future with Unity Engine. So I think if we're looking at overall, there are a few areas. Obviously, the creating once and shipping anywhere is going to be really important to them because they can put it up to lots of different platforms. Something else that I think you should remember if you're thinking about how whether this is like going to be a positive change for Footmanager is it really opens up the pool of developers that they can hire from to work on the game, because there's a lot of people who are very familiar with Unity Engine or similar engines or similar coding platforms used within Unity. So I think it just create, rather than their own completely bespoke engine, they can hire people who've worked on other projects using Unity or using something similar, who are similar to those kind of workflows as well, and get them into the company and really improve Football Manager. One thing maybe a little bit concerning is if you go on Unity's page and you look at their Unity resources, a lot of the things are about monetization, and some of the videos about extending your game's lifespan and live ops, which is maybe a little bit worrying, again, down that monetization route. But something as part of that is user-generated content. And I do think Unity could create an environment where we might see more user-created content, particularly through things like the Steam Workshop and mods, being able to add in, custom elements of your own. I think it'll be up to Sports Interactive to how much that is possible. I imagine the editor and databases are still going to be possible. Beyond that, they might want to be careful because of licensing reasons, particularly as they've got bigger licenses now, like the Premier League, the Champions League, the Bundesliga, etc. The final thing that I think could be really, really interesting for how Sports Interactive use Unity and the future of Unity is the way that it might implement. This isn't something they'd be able to do with a studio on their own. So using tools that are built into Unity or being built into Unity, because this is probably going to be the future of video game creation. Now, obviously, different kinds of AI. There's generative AI. There is AI that drives the way in which NPCs react, of course, the traditional term of how we've used the term AI. But they've got quite a few different tools. Muse and Sentis, I think both of these are still running. I don't think these are being discontinued. So Muse allows for the creation of the kind of 3D applications, experiences, things like that. And then Sentis lets AI run in these real-time 3D engines. So there are some useful cases for how AI might be implemented. I don't think we're going to get things like AI press conferences because the risk there is way too high. If the AI starts going rogue and saying crazy things, it would have to be really locked down and they'd have to really control it. But there are other opportunities. So things like the face generation, if the face generation is done using an AI tool in game, that could create some really realistic, and you've obviously seen what people in the FM community have done over the last 2 to 3 years using AI to create face packs of realistic looking players without actually having these be real people. So I think that's a really interesting way of doing it. And at a very basic level, the AI tools that are integrated into Unity are at best going to help narrow down their development time, help them develop these things much quicker, put them into the game much quicker. You can see they've got animation, behavior, texture, all these kind of tools that help with on the development side. So it might not be fitted into the final game, there might not be AI built into how the game plays, but it might be built into the development process that helps them make a much better, a much cleaner games. So I think that's a really promising area of Unity, which we might see some improvements on. So that's sort of where I think Unity might improve Football Manager. We're still waiting to see what it's going to look like. I think you've got to set your expectations at like a reasonable level. I don't think go in and expect FIFA level graphics. I don't think they would ever aim for FIFA level graphics. I don't think that's the goal of the studio. They want a nice polished football management simulator. You know, I think they'd want it to look like Football Match, but you know, across a pitch. You don't need this zoomed in face. Also for licensing reasons of Ronaldo doing the gritty, right? I also don't want that in my game. So yeah, I think there's like a really promising opportunity here with Unity. It'll be interesting to see how different it is to the previous game, because I imagine this is quite a large leap to take it from their previous engine to their new one. I don't know how many new features we're going to see, but I think certainly in terms of streamlining the process for them in future, this definitely allows them to maybe, even if 25 is a smaller update, I think 26, 27, we could start to see much bigger updates if Unity stays, because there has been a lot of problems at Unity. If you haven't seen my last video, make sure you go check that out on the problems over at Unity. Some of those are resolved, some of those aren't. It seems to be on a better path now, but it's definitely worth a check out.